Welcome back, everyone, to Marked. This is Daniel, and with me today is a good friend of mine. If you've been here for a while, you know him, Mr. Greg, or should I say Dr. Greg. Today, we're going to be talking about overcoming hardships and building a fulfilled life regardless of those. Greg is a longtime friend of mine, and I've been with him a little bit about this journey that we're going to be talking about today, which is overcoming hardships on the way to becoming a doctor. So, Greg, tell people a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from. You're an OG, but, some people might be new and fresh and not know much about you. So, yeah, bro, go for it.
Yeah, so we've known each other for a while, and we got closer a couple of years ago. We really got a lot of time to get to pick each other's brains, and we have science backgrounds, so I think that happened quite naturally. But
Right.
about myself, I was born in Ukraine, but I grew up in Florida, in Sarasota area. That's kind of how we met. We were in the same area, same similar churches and similar circles. Um, but I have a bachelor's degree in biology at FGCU.
Let's go,
For
Eagles.
Yeah,
Woo!
yeah, represent. Yeah, and I'm currently a fourth year medical student at LeCom. So
Bro,
that's my background.
it feels like time goes so quick, man. I remember when you were just finishing up, bro, like getting your bachelor's and stuff, and um,
Yeah.
just like you talking about, entering into school and stuff. And I think that's a good place to kind of take off, so to say, on that plane
Hmm.
of this journey. Talk
Yeah.
about that, bro, because, getting into med school, I think most people know this, or maybe they don't. Um, it's not easy. It's competitive, and there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through to get into it. So just go
Yeah.
through that, bro. How was it for you? Like, how did you navigate that entry phase?
Yeah. So for me, I had kind of a unique way into med school. Part of the reason why I went where I went, and my story is the way that it is because LECOM had a early acceptance program with FGCU, and so that attracted me from the beginning. And so instead of applying to a million med schools and going through this really stressful process, I decided I was like, man, I could go through my undergrad and have an acceptance early, and I don't have to spend $1 million and all that extra time and worry about where to go and whatnot. And I knew LECOM was close to my parents' house, so I was like, this is, an easy choice. So I did that, and I think I think after it was in my first year of med school, I did the application, and I think near the end of sorry, in my first year of undergrad that I did the application to med school, and then I got the preliminary acceptance, and then they said if you just follow our path, then and do all the classes and do everything according to the way we want it, then you'll be in.
Did
So
you have an easy time in undergrad? Like, or were there some classes that were like, bruh,
oh,
I hate this.
there are
I'm
definitely
thinking
some.
of quitting. I want to change my major.
Yeah, so there's a few things that made my undergrad experience kind of more difficult, and I think one of them was during undergrad I was working as an LPN, so I was a nurse, and I was working at a nursing home, maybe a few times a month, a few shifts a month, depending on what's going on, and I was trying to not rack up debt in undergrad because I was anticipating a lot in med school,
Smart
so
man.
well, got to think ahead. And so that was one thing. But the other thing about it, the added challenge was, yeah, there are some difficult classes. Like a degree in biology is not, it's not a walk in the park. The class that really gave me a hard time was biochem. Probably
Bro,
was the most difficult one for me.
preach, brother,
And
preach.
I mean, the thing is, it's like I liked the idea of biochem, but I really think I was. It depends on who you have as your professor
Bro,
because
I Honestly,
I,
I think, bro, honestly, with biochem, it's not even the professor, it's just the class itself. Like
well,
it's
it is
it's so
hard, no doubt.
romanticized
Yeah.
that like you get into it and you're like, oh bro, this is definitely not it. Okay, I'm gonna give an example, but like it's like, bro, you meet a girl, she looks pretty, you take her to the beach, and you're like, bro, who just came out? You know, you're like, same thing with this. You come in, you take your first dip into biochem, and you're like, bruh, this is a whole nother beast. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like it. Yeah. It sounds nice and it sounds like I don't know. The concepts are fun, I guess I'd put it that way. But like when you're actually doing the types of questions and things that like were on those exams, I remember we had a 3 hour exam, and during undergrad, we had long exams, difficult classes and things. But that particular exam was the only one I think in undergrad or that class that I actually used up all the time
wow.
that I needed, and so I used it those 3 hours, and it was seven there was like 9 questions, I think, on the exam, and then you had to choose seven of them. So you didn't have to do all 9. But anyways, and they were just like long answer, and I filled up, I think 8 or 9 blank sheets of paper with drawings and explanations and writing, and I mean, it was some of the most unbelievable stuff. And anyways, the truth is that class actually made me question my ability to be whether I could make it or whether I was smart, probably more than even a lot of things in med school did. So it's up there with some of the other challenges, and I felt like that professor was just out to get us. But
Bro, and I had professors like that too. I mean, not in biochem, more in general chem. I think if I remember correctly, my gen chem professor was like, don't expect to get an A in my class. And I think I also had that in genetics. Like, she's just like straight up, and everybody's like looking at each other like, did she just say that? Yeah. And
yeah,
how did you overcome that, bro, though? Like, because I mean, those thoughts are in your head and they're not going away unless you deal with it, right? They're going to
yeah.
be playing around. They're going to be like poking at you.
Hmm.
What were some practical things you did, or maybe some people gave you some tips that you applied in that situation?
I don't know if I was, had the best coping skills at the time, but I don't think they were horrible. But I think I just kept thinking to myself, like, you know, um, I kept thinking to myself that you don't have to be the best at everything, and I kept
Mm.
thinking to myself that, like, maybe I'm not as good at one thing, but maybe I'm good at another thing. And then I kept reminding myself that there is a little bit of chance, randomness to everything. And that, like, just because things didn't work out, it doesn't always mean that you didn't try, or
Yeah.
or that you weren't even prepared. Sometimes you are prepared and things just go bad. And I kept reminding myself that, hey, like, life is like that. And that the hardest things I think to overcome when you're looking at success is like when you really put everything in and it just didn't work. And I worked, I mean, so hard for that class, and then I think at some point, to be honest, I think I just stopped trying as hard. I think I stopped taking notes at all. That was the only class I think I ever tried to take notes in. And then I was like, why am I even taking notes? I don't take notes. And I just stopped. And then I was like, just trust your gut. Just like, you know what? Like, whatever. And I feel like I was doing as good or better once I went back to my normal ways.
So it sounds
and
like you're saying like
um,
staying with consistency, or uh, you know, kind of like staying within the flow that you've been in, that rhythm is what kind of got you through it all, if I'm understanding
well,
correctly.
so a few things, but one of the things that I would say is like is knowing what works. For example, like for me, I was like, spending all that energy on notes, it kind of distracts me from like absorbing the lecture in, right?
Right.
And that was always something that worked for me. I was a very big lecture guy. And I think looking back, part of the reason why I failed, well, I didn't fail that class, but I failed at, like, acing it. I didn't get that A that I wanted. Um, I think I got like a B, and that, like, uh, destroyed me. But I barely pulled up to it because I think I was like chilling at a seat like
Bro,
most of the
you're
semester.
you're like those very strict parents who are like, you got a B,
Yeah,
you got an 80%. Where did the 20% go?
yeah,
Did it go
yeah.
on vacation?
Well, I mean, if you think I'm bad, like, you have no idea how most med students or pre-med are, it's like, it's unbelievable. But anyhow, we're kind of expecting that, you can only get away with maybe two Bs, on your application for med school, because your GPA has to be so high. But anyhow, um, what I guess I was trying to say is that you go back to like what works, right? So if you know something works, and what I realized was I was kind of trying to really intimidated by the people around me who were doing better than me. I was trying to copy their method, and I was like, I've never been that kind of guy, and and it didn't work for me. Um, like the way that like all these notes and all of this, I was like, no, that didn't work. I kind of have to do it, more my way, and uh, if it's not working, like I throw it out, So I went back and I did fine, and everything. The other thing is I kind of had a feeling I was like, this isn't it, this isn't over, and like even if this doesn't go super well, I had like, well, I know that other things will go well, and I know that I got like other talents and other abilities. And sure enough, like later when we took when we were in physics and physics in the summer with some of the other classmates that I was like really intimidated by, I wasn't honestly, I wasn't even really trying, and I did really great, and that like really restored a lot of confidence in me that like I lost from the biochem. um, whereas those classmates were doing really good in biochem, and then in physics they're trying, and they're struggling. And so I kind of feel like that's just a reminder. It's like, no, like you need things to keep you humble. We're all human beings, and we're all going to struggle sometimes. And I think after that moment, it's like I didn't take it so hard on myself when things didn't work out, and it didn't take it so personally. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean that you're, like I just stopped. I tried to learn, and looking back, I'm like, man, I if I applied different techniques, because now I kind of have a better understanding of how that professor works, right? I think I could have done better, But anyhow, like that's, you start changing your mindset from it's like a personal thing to understanding that like, no, it's, maybe your methods or maybe even just bad luck, or there's a lot of things to it, and yeah,
it's
that's kind of how I was going through with that.
it sounds like what the premise of the whole thing is, it's okay to not be okay. You know, everybody has their down days. Everybody has their bad class, so to say.
Yeah, yeah,
And at the end, it's like, don't give up. Don't give up, because you might just be there, right there at the finish line. And if you give up, well, bro, like you were so close, And I feel like very often in life, that's what happens to people. They're so close to the victory, and they're just like,
yeah, yeah,
they just let it get to them. And I
absolutely.
think maybe that's even the secret to life, just don't let things get too much into your head, or, just keep pushing through, even when it
Yeah,
seems like impossible, unrealistic, without hope, God, or, that like the gifts that are put into you, they will come through. If it's meant for you, it'll happen.
yeah.
And yeah.
Another thing I wanted to say about that was I always knew that a lot of it had to do with just being a time game. And I know that like there is some element of when you're making it, and the thing about medicine that makes it feel like difficult is that it is a competition, that you're competing against so many people all the time, right? So that's why we compare each other against each other, and we're so competitive. We're all trying to get in for like a few spots, and then again, so we're trying to get into undergrad, then we're trying to get into med school, and then we're trying to get into to our residencies, and then fellowships and whatnot. And so we're always trying to compete. But um, I think if you look at it the way that I did, I think early on I realized that a lot of it is just a time game, and some people will quit just because they get exhausted,
Hmm.
not because they're even bad. And I was like, well, maybe I'm even not the best, but I'm not going to quit because I'm exhausted. I'm not going to quit because I'm tired. I'm going to keep going. And I knew, I was like, oh, that's at least one thing I can say that I got, because some people, they you heard the phrase like that person peaked too early, right? So some people do that where they're doing incredible and you're like, okay, I know they're doing great in this test. I know they're doing great in this class or whatever, but you're like, but maybe in the long game they won't, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe they won't be able to sustain the amount of energy and everything they're putting into whatever. And you're comparing yourself, but you don't realize that in the long game, like they can't sustain that. And I tried to say like, well, I'm gonna keep like maintain a sustainable approach, and if that approach doesn't work, then whatever. And what I mean by that is, I decided I'm not gonna do any all nighters. You know, I'm not gonna start taking notes because that's not what I did. I'm not gonna cheat. I'm not gonna do other things. And I'm like, and if I think that my method will work because like I did believe that like God put me here for a reason. I believe that I had skill and I had talent, um, and I believe that I have like a good strategy. But I was like, even if that doesn't get through, then it's like, you know what? Then I don't want to get in. And if that's not it, then it's like I'm not supposed to be in, and it's fine. I'll figure out something else. And that's just kind of something I like resolved within myself. There's just a few lines that I'm not going to cross. I'm not going to like kill myself, you know, for this one grade. I'm not going to break my moral code for, grade. And like, and I kind of feel like the people who would, they actually ended up exhausting themselves. They wore themselves out. They morally felt exhausted. They were ashamed of themselves. Then they have no lines and, and their boundaries in their own life start getting shaky and they don't respect themselves. It's so many things happen. And, but I kind of feel like it's the long game. You really got to be playing at the long game. It's not, just getting passing a test. It's not even just passing a class or even getting just a degree. It's getting from one degree into the next degree, into a residency, into a career. Like this is a really long game. It's trying to build habits and trying to build like a personality or a character that will be, lead you into the kind of person you want to be. And so that's kind of what I was thinking more about. Like, how can I start already being the person that I want to be?
So that's basically the entrance, right, of your story. So now let's fast forward into med school, right? That's a whole nother beast of itself. It's like level 2 or whatever, Yeah. If undergrad's level 1, this is level 2. And how's that like? How's that environment different from undergrad, bro? How do the tests and kind of like the social dynamics of classmates and basically how do you even find a balance between school life and real life, quote unquote real life, because it's real life regardless, but I think you get the question, right?
Yeah. So what's the difference? I mean, it's like completely a different planet. I wouldn't say it's a different country. I'd say it's a different planet. For many reasons. One of the reasons is, I mean, it depends on which med school you go to, and you'd be surprised. There's definitely some like, differences in like the culture of med school. I would say the content is pretty much the same, probably. But like, obviously I've only been to mine, so like, but when I listen to other med students and when we're on the like, in the hospital and, most of us, have similar like understandings and, we all take kind of the same test, for boards and stuff. But anyhow, the main difference I think is, everyone does say, yeah, you're drinking from a fire hydrant, and that's true. I mean, like the amount of content, like I guess the people who in undergrad would like to make these like nice, pretty notes and then make these like journals. And, I'm sorry for all the ladies out there who are like making these beautiful like gel pens and like, I mean, that's cute, but like almost everyone who did that sort of thing could not sustain that in medical school. And what I mean by that is I look at those kind of people, I see them as someone who they really want to know everything about the topic. And ironically, I think most people who go into med school, they want to be that guy who knows everything about medicine, everything about the body. Well, if you don't learn in the first year and the second year, you're going to learn it really soon. You will never be that guy. You will never know everything, And it's kind of weird. We simultaneously say, oh, yeah, I always want to learn. I always want to be. But really, we want to get to a point where like, no, I don't need to learn anymore. I could tell everyone everything, And
Sounds
so
like
a
a
little bit of,
humbling experience.
oh, it is, but the thing is, you quickly understand that, yeah, the amount of material is extreme, and it's like impossible to grasp. It feels like that all the time, um, like literally all the time. And I mean, undergrad was hard. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you've been through it. You know it's not easy. But the thing
Heck
about
no.
it, you have to change your strategy. In med school, you have to realize that, like, for me, here's a controversial phrase, but I've said it a few times, and I don't remember if you've heard me say it. But people say, quality, is more important than quantity, right? Well, I think in med school, actually, when I came down to taking or getting the information down, I would say quantity over quality. And what I mean by that is the sheer amount of volume that you take in. And the people who I saw who struggled the most, and I mean, I definitely struggled at times too. Everyone struggles at some point in med school. That's the point. But the difficult times is when you're trying to get into the detail of something before you got the big picture of it. Um,
Hmm.
and if you have a huge amount of material, how do you get the big picture of like a huge amount of material, right? It's really tempting to just be like, I don't really even know what's going on here yet, and how to move on. But the idea is, I mean, I learned really quickly. Listen to things at 1.5 speed, 1.75 speed, two times speed if you can. You adjust quickly, but I would do that to videos, and it's better to watch it two or three times at like a really fast speed where you're kind of catching half of it than to watch it one time and catch every word. That's kind of what I mean. It's better to read a chapter like four times extremely fast, like unbelievably fast, you know, than it is to read it one time and it's really slow and like making pretty notes and like doing all these little things. And that's kind of how it was for me. I can't say that's how it is for everyone, but I definitely seen that with a lot of other people too. And then, when you see conditions, when you see like things in the hospital, it's the same thing. Like, you don't want to just see one patient with that disease. You want to see as many as you possibly can, even if it's like for a short period of time. Like, it's kind of also believing in your ability to like absorb a lot of things, and also that like somehow like your mind is really capable. So you have to have that like intrinsic belief. But
Neuroplasticity.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it, but it's developing kind of like a framework, and that was the biggest change, in like how I studied. The other thing is our school.
Did you
Go
ever
ahead.
use the Dr. Caroline Leaf? She talks about how like you can memorize stuff very well by developing like this castle, so to say, or memory
Mhm.
palace, as she calls it.
Yes,
Did you ever use that or some
I
form of
yeah I've
that?
used it.
Yeah.
I've used it, and I've definitely used it. But honestly, I haven't used it as much as I feel like I could have, and I wish that I did. Just because it takes a lot of time to put it in to it, and you have to like, it's almost like, it's almost easier to do that if you already have like a chart table, or like just straight up data that you have to memorize, or specific facts.
Hmm.
Um, because there is a little bit of like that. The weird thing about med school, and I mean, it's you do need both. You need to have like straight up a lot of memorization. There's like a lot of rote memorization. There's no doubt about that. And I know like a lot of other disciplines, PhDs, or they'll like, oh yeah, med students are so all they do is memorize. Yeah, we do memorize a lot, but there's definitely, you do have to still understand what you're memorizing too. A lot of times that's specifically important in physiology. And then when you get on the wards and you're seeing patients, doctors are going to grill the heck out of you, and then they ask like why questions, how questions, and like what if questions are like, you know that happens all the time. But the memory palace, sometimes it'd be hard because it'd be hard to take like a video, for example, or an entire concept and put it into a memory palace. If it's like a smaller chunk, let's say, like let's say you're trying to remember all of the diseases that could cause anemia. That's like a good example.
Right.
And what's even cooler is that a lot of med students use something called Sketchy. So it's a company that takes a lot of these concepts and then makes a sketch out of them. So it kind of makes a memory palace for you in a sense, but it's like a picture. And then it goes and it tells the story of like, and explains every piece of that. And there's like these videos, right? And
Hmm.
so what I would do is I would essentially watch those videos and it's a pretty well known thing. I mean, almost every med student uses it at this point for pharmacology. Really hard to memorize stuff. Uh, and some pathology, but mostly pharmacology and microbiology stuff. That's how we use it. That's like almost all the med students' secret. Is it's this sketchy. And there's another brand, or like Picmonic, I think. Anyways, another company also doing the same thing. So yeah, I mean, like they use a picture and then they draw like funny, weird characters and things that you try to memorize it, and then some people, if you know what Anki is, it's that it's this software, flashcard software that like allows you to um, you know work on cards that you don't know so well, and it like repeats it for you, and it kind of times them out for you so that you use it every day. People will use the sketchy like videos, and then someone like took screenshots of them, and then they'll like black out parts of it and ask you what it is, so like to really reinforce it. I actually didn't use that on key. I tried it for a little bit, and I realized I was like, it felt like more work than for me. But a lot of med students use it, probably about 30 or 40 to, I don't know, 50 or 60%.
So, bro, thank you for all those tips. I bet this will help somebody who's, whether they're taking a path that's different from becoming a doctor, maybe
So
pharmacology,
I
maybe.
lost you there, man. What was the first thing you said?
I said, I bet that these tips will help some people out who are students. Maybe they're on different paths, but ultimately it will help them out.
Yeah.
And, if people heard it, take it down as a no, and apply it. Tell us what you think, whether it helped you or not. I want to kind of transition to a little bit more like personal stuff, right? In terms
Yeah.
of, on this path of becoming a doctor. So
Mhm.
one of the things that very often we hear is like when you're going for a doctor, you're sacrificing relationships, right? Or something got to give, right? There's sacrifices that
Yeah.
come at a price.
Yeah.
What were some of those things you had to give up, and how did you manage? Because like, what do relationships are important, but also you have to be intentional with the relationships, and you also have to kind of figure out which ones you're willing, so to say, to kind of give some room, or just put it on pause, right? And sometimes people don't
Yeah.
understand, sadly, and they go on to, part ways, so to say. Um,
Yeah.
how'd you deal with that, bro?
That's a fantastic question, and I mean, everyone really has a different answer for this, and I think even more than like studying styles and like ways that people like learn things, this probably has even more variety to it and more. There's not really a right answer, but I can speak for myself. And personally, um, it has been very hard to like maintain a lot of relationships. People don't. I mean, that's not made up. It's definitely a true phenomenon. Um, it's important to have someone who understands. Obviously, the thing is, it gets hard because a lot of people say they understand, and then very quickly they start realizing that no, it is not what they thought it was going to be, and it was not. Yeah, it's and they didn't realize like how much of a toll it takes on you. And so sometimes I do have a girlfriend, and sometimes she will say like, oh yeah, like, oh, it seems like you need to just rest a little bit because you're and people can tell that you are not yourself sometimes just because you are stressed out and you're thinking about everything, and you have no brain capacity after 16 hours or like 12 hours in the hospital or something,
Yeah.
in your later years of med school. Or if you're thinking about boards or something, then you might be really stressed out as well. And anyhow, it is important, in terms of relationships. I mean, in terms of my hobbies, I definitely had to like put on hold my music, and I would like hide my guitars and hide my phones sometimes in another room. I'd like I'd go to a library, have like other people hold me accountable, like I would do things on purpose so that I have no access
Coffee
to things.
shops with the
Coffee
boys.
shops. Yeah, yeah, I remember that. But I mean, it's like doing whatever, and I literally would intentionally give up things that I love and that are even good. Like I said, making and writing music. I love that, and to some degree, without that, I feel like I'm going insane. I have to play some music, but there were, definitely months I was in New York or I was in Michigan on some of these away rotations, and I made sure to not bring any instrument with me because I was like, I'm gonna use it as like a, as a crutch maybe, and I might get just
Yeah.
distracted. I might not, have that. But it actually kind of hurts because like as soon as I get home, I'm like, man, and I just start playing and writing and things like that. But it also doesn't feel like you're yourself all the time. It feels like a part of you kind of dies. Actually, it's. I mean, it sounds dramatic, but um, in a way, yeah, you kind of have to. You kind of have to let go of some areas of your life or some things in your, that you love that will get in the way. And sometimes that's how demanding it really is. Um, yeah,
Bro, that's awesome. Honestly, like these conversations, I feel like they don't happen too often. I feel like, especially within like med school students, they're kind of just like sticking to the book, to the script of like what everybody else did. And usually, like when you start talking with them, they're not mentally like as healthy, right? As so to say, a lot of other people who have different careers.
yeah,
Um, because of a lack of that like social interaction and ability to express the hardships and to somebody. And I don't know about you, but like is that something that helps you, like talking with people? Does that like unwind your mind and help you kind of
absolutely,
de-stress?
absolutely. I mean, I consider myself a highly extroverted person, and I mean, I when I was bored studying and I was kind of isolating on purpose because I mean, I was not able to focus enough to really get what I needed to get done, how much studying I had to do, and bring up my practice test scores. I I actually was kind of depressed because I was not talking to people. I was just sitting there and like was not playing any music. I was, but I had to do it, and it's like the amount of time that I needed to put into it to get like, a proper like a good preparation. I mean, I honestly felt, yeah, I didn't feel super great. It was kind of low. It was kind of dark, and almost every med student will tell you the same. Not everyone is as extroverted as me, and maybe they have other things and that bother them. But for me, yeah, I just talking to someone, I would come home and I'd be like, family, and I was just like hug my family, and they're all like, what's wrong with you? And I'm just like, but because I'd be like locking myself away, in a library or something, whatever, and
Yeah, bro. And it's kind of interesting, recently, I don't know if you heard, but like ChatGPT, the AI,
yeah,
bro. So it took like some board exams for
yeah, I
like,
saw that.
it passed like the board exam for like, bar, for
Yeah,
a med school, and I think an
yeah,
MBA board exam or something like that. And I'm just like thinking, I'm like, bro, like, are we the last generation that's ever gonna study, bro? Especially with like Elon Musk and the Neuralink, bro. Just like, bro, ding, got your download. You're like, I'm gonna
yeah,
be a doctor today.
yeah, yeah.
So
No,
it's
we're the
kind of
last generation for sure.
interesting.
I know. It actually hurts to be honest. I just saw the chat GPT. I was like, what? Like, it just felt. I mean, and it's like it's totally fair because obviously it has all the computing power and the algorithms and all the learning and everything is, it's well done and bravo. But at the same time, it was like it almost makes it look easy because you're thinking that the pain that it took to get to where I am, and I'm like, wow. And AI just like figured it out. um
Right. Bro,
but
the craziest thing was the papers that it writes, like the
yeah,
essays. I'm like, ENC 1101 and ENC 1102 right
well,
there, bro.
some things are getting
Crazy.
outdated obviously because of that, and you never know what the world is going to look like because, yeah, I mean, certain things are becoming less important in a way. But I kind of feel like maybe in maybe it's gonna create a a shortage of like genuine talent for like specific situations, specifically like live interaction with humans. Obviously digital stuff is where AI is gonna, rock the world, right? But I mean, it's the in-person stuff, and I think what's happening is like people are like, I mean, already, right? Why do we buy handmade stuff? Like why? Like robots are so good, you know,
Right.
like factories are so good, and they're so precise. Like why do we want hand built anything? That's kind of like I think the same question, right?
Hmm.
It's like technically most of the time hand built is kind of worse in a way. It's less precise
Hmm.
almost all the time. Like a CNC machine, 3D printer, whatever, like can always do it better. But like, is it really better because it's more precise?
Hmm.
And it's like sometimes, and because we do long for that human component, I think, that like natural, like irregularity and that natural imperfection actually somehow draws us in to a hand built product, you know?
Yeah.
And there's something about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, I personally think in the years to come, human interaction will become a luxury product. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is that personal interaction, like going into a coffee shop where it's not being served by a barista robot, by an
Yeah.
actual human being, it'll be considered luxury and an
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's just interesting where this
And
world
in
is
some
heading.
way, well, I think in some way, what's interesting about that is that like it's something that we all kind of know, like deep inside, but now like people are actually starting to put to words to it because we have to. We're starting to say, hey, there actually is a value even in like going to McDonald's and having someone talk to you. Whereas I think in the past before no one was just like, oh yeah, like so what? Like that person is this or that. Who cares? Now you're like, you know what? Even if I'm at McDonald's, I'd rather talk to a person. Even if that person got an attitude, I'd rather talk with them. You know what I mean? Like even if whatever, but you're like, it still feels better, you know?
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I was talking to a patient today actually at the clinic, and so he's like he was a hypnotist and like a mentalist, and so he did these like shows, and he is really like a great communicator and really like good into the psychology of people, and he's just saying like you have no idea how bad people are at communicating, and he's like with all the doctors I've met, like bedside manner is such a rare thing. So people think, oh, I'm so smart, like I don't need to have bedside manner. I'm so smart, I don't need to you know try essentially or even communicate. And he's like people hire me literally to teach that. So
Wow. Yeah, bro. Well, guys, I hope this helped you out. Hope this little story of Greg's, overcoming those hardships of going through med school and, undergrad, just this journey of him becoming a doctor will help you succeed in your journey of going for maybe a doctor as well or whatever other career path. And thank you, Greg, for being on again today, bro. It was a pleasure
yeah,
having you. All right, guys, like, share, subscribe. You know the jam. See you next time. Love ya. Till next time. Bye.